don't like to limit myself in my creative experiences. I like to have this expansive world to be creative in and enjoy all that I'm doing. I feel like creativity is something that is innately intertwined within the human condition. There's creativity almost everywhere in life if you're willing to look for it. I'm Rachel Wiseman, and for what I do creatively, I feel like I tend to live my life in general creatively. I make art for fun, I teach art, but besides art, you know, I find that there's creativity in the food that I create. I'm a forager, so I get creative with my food that I eat. I get creative with things that I write and my thoughts. So in my career field, I'm considered an art teacher, which I teach both middle school and elementary art, and a lot of times because I'm the art teacher, I'm associated with a lot of the fine arts like sculpting, painting, drawing, and all of those things. And while I enjoy those things, I feel like for myself, I like to be immersed in creativity as a whole. And hilariously, I find that I usually spend more time writing than I do painting as an art teacher. And I think that just has to do with the different materials that I have available in each time. And you know, it's much easier to carry around a journal and a pen than like all of your oil paints. Because I'm an art teacher, I'm expected to teach like a really wide range of mediums. So I do teach like clay, paper mache, painting, drawing, 3D art, digital art. Like there's so many different things in that field as a spectrum. I personally, I really love doing eco art, which is where I like go outside and I'll sketch pictures of, you know, the nature that I find. I'll do nature studies and look at the details of the plants, or sometimes I don't try to render them exactly as they look and I just try to kind of create what I see out of them. I like bushcraft, where you're kind of taking sticks and making things from the sticks, and survival skill stuff, and that's all creative as well, because you have to think about, like, I can sit here and look like, oh my gosh, this right here is like a white clover, and you know, how can I use this? You know, I know that this is like loaded with protein, I can eat this. Can I use it as like a poultice to be able to like use on wounds when I'm out in the wild? So there's creative thought in everything that I'm doing. What I tend to use most often is just like a basic Bic pen in a sketchbook. I like using only pen because it kind of challenges me to, if I make a mistake, turn it into something else and be able to just explore with what I have. It's a really simple tool that I can carry with me in a sketchbook everywhere I go, especially seeing as I love hiking so much. It's easy to carry that with me. I think that creativity, it's just imperative to our well-being. It's, you know, a part of how we interact with and see the world. We create within the world, and it's just a part of everything that we're doing all the time. For people to come up with new resolutions for just things like global issues and anything like that, you know, you need creative thought. You need to be able to think outside the box and figure out new ways to solve old problems. Somebody out there, you know, decided, if anyone's ever heard of the life straw, you go over to the dirty water like this and you literally stick the straw in the water, and it's got a filtration system, so people who live in places with really poor quality water can have access to fresh water, and a creative mind came up with that. So I think that creativity is vital for so many different situations in all different fields. It's just such a vital part of our humanity. As a child, I feel like my creativity presented itself in a wide variety of ways, just as it kind of is in my adult life. I think that all children are natural creatives because it's that raw point in life before we get concerned about making mistakes and before we end up kind of hindering ourselves to being able to experience our own creativity wholeheartedly, in a way. I was fortunate to grow up with people who were also pretty creative and people who supported my creativity. For myself, I teach both elementary and middle school age children every day in a public school setting, and I love my job. I love children. It is my job to take a curriculum, take a concept, and figure out how to create a lesson in some kind of way that's going to engage and interact with children. So not just that they are hearing me talk about it, but so that they have an experience within it and are able to retain that information. You have this information that you need to teach, and then you also have these really valuable life skills that you want to be able to provide your students. And then you have the specific dynamics of the individual class that you're teaching. And you kind of have to combine all of these things into creating lessons, not just for children, but for the specific children that you have in your classroom. So it kind of is a process of knowing your curriculum, knowing your content that you're going to teach, and being able to foster enough of a relationship with your children to know what it is that they like. So for me, it's like, okay, my kids love video games, so I'll play some video games and get to know some of the games so that I can apply that to lessons and they'll be able to understand it through that. They like TikTok, they like songs and all sorts of things. So it's a combination of like, okay, here is my art, you know, and one of the things I really love about teaching art is that it is really malleable and you can teach almost anything through it, because with the art, it's the action that the kids are doing. They're learning about those things, but you can create anything in the art field. So it helps me to be able to teach the content that I need to teach and do all of the artsy stuff, but I can also combine life lessons that I hope for them to learn, things that will instill confidence and things that will instill empathy. One lesson that I teach my students is limited palette painting, which means that they have a limited set of colors that they get to paint with. But the way that I set it up is I base the paint colors, each table gets a different paint color, and I base it off of a different kind of color blindness. So people who are like dichromats, where they've got only 2 cones that function their eyes, I'll have one set of kids, they get the blue, the red, black and white, but they don't get yellow. And then I get another table that's got like blue and yellow, but they don't get red, but everyone gets black and white. And then I'll have one that's a trichromat, which is somebody who has all 3 of their normal functioning cones. So they'll get the 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, black and white, so they can mix and make whatever colors they want with it. And then there is something called a tetramat. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's where someone is actually born with a 4th cone and can see extra colors. So mantis shrimp and butterflies are creatures in the world that have these kind of extra cones in their eyes, and there's a few people who are born with that. So the tables that were representing them, they also got an actual green paint, an actual purple paint, an actual orange paint, so they didn't have to mix those colors. So I tell the kids in the beginning of the lesson, I give them these colors and I say you're only allowed to use the paints that's at your table. And I don't tell them entirely why yet, because I want them to experience it. And so they go through and some of them are like, yay, we get all the colors. I have purple, I have orange, it's so great. And they get so excited having all the colors. And then there's the kid in the back where there's a monochromatic too, where they literally only got red, black, and white. And so they're in the back like, man, why do I only have red, black, and white? Like, I really wanted yellow. Yellow is my favorite color. I really wanted purple or whatever it is, right? And so they go through, and after a couple classes, and they're only able to use these paints, you've got some of the kids that are like feeling really excited that they're just kind of they're just painting and doing what they're doing, but you've got these select kids that are getting kind of frustrated, and they're kind of like, why is it that these other tables get all the other colors and we have to only paint with red, black, and white? Like, I'm a little frustrated here. And what's really cool about it is at the end, I tell them that each of their table represents a different kind of color blindness, and I show them videos that it kind of simulates what it's like in those different kinds of colorblind stages, and I had them guess which one they thought they were. But we also correlated this to other things in life, you know, and I asked them, like, how did it feel? You know, what did you notice? And a lot of the times the kids in the back that they had the red, black, and white or whatever would be like, it was really frustrating because I didn't have enough colors and I couldn't mix the colors that I needed, and I really wanted to da-da-da-da-da-da. And then the kids that had all the colors, that had the 4 cones, basically were like, we didn't even notice that like people were struggling with only 3 colors because we had all the colors. And we were able to correlate things like that to other situations in life beyond color blindness, such as poverty. Just kind of asking them, like, you know, what are some other examples in which people might feel like this, where they are limited in something? So for them, it not only teaches them to paint with monochromatic style and limited palette painting, but it also teaches them different life lessons where they're given this experience to be able to simulate what it's like to have more and less of something, the limitations that some people might see within society, and just being able to empathize with that. If you're someone who loves art, that's great, but I think if you want to be an art teacher, you also really need to love teaching. I see a lot of teachers who have a passion for art. They have a passion for their subject in general, and they're really excited about this subject and they want to share it with their students, but they don't have a passion for teaching, and they go into the teaching field and then they get really kind of frustrated and disappointed realizing that the students aren't sharing those same passions with them. A lot of times it kind of ends up disappointing them within their passion because they want to share it, and sometimes you're going to have kids that don't like your stuff, you know. It's like, you know, not every subject is made for everybody. I think that if you want to be a teacher, you want to have a passion for both people children, teaching, and the process that it comes, because the job is so much more than just painting. I spend far more of my time talking and performing than I am actually doing any of the fine arts. Most of my day is spent with me jumping and saying loud sounds like, oh my gosh, here's how we hold a paintbrush, everyone. Don't forget to put the paper towel in the trash can. So you want to make sure that if you're going to be a teacher, you want to make sure that you enjoy performing, you enjoy being around people, and being able to just have that energy that you need to be able to keep your students engaged and help them be able to learn. And know that you're going to have students that are going to get frustrated with your content. You're going to have students that are going to come in and never have touched a paintbrush before at all, and they're 13 years old. And you're going to have to be able to figure out how to get them to the place that they need to be in your content that you're expected to teach, and be able to help them with the life skills in that same process. A lot of the job involves loving people. And if you're someone who doesn't really do well putting energy out to people and performing for people, I would recommend choosing something else. But if you find that you absolutely love children, and you absolutely love silly things and acting like a goofball all day and just talking and playing with children, and if you absolutely love, you know, the art process of that too, or even if you're not doing art teaching, maybe you want to be a science teacher or whatever it is, as long as you love children and being able to like put on your happy voice and being able to talk about teddy bears and Sonic and Spider-Man and whatever else, and talk about how many loose teeth someone has in a day, you gotta love those kinds of things. I think that that is probably the core of the job, is just loving the children. I think as a teacher, one of the things that really hits is when you're able to, you have your passion in your subject and you're able to share it with a student and they have that same passion back. And if you're able to even just like get a hint of like getting them to love the thing that you're teaching, is really fantastic. But you're gonna have kids that just don't like it, and that's okay. The process of, you know, for me, it's if a kid doesn't like art, they don't like art, and I tell them it's okay. Art's not for everyone. And I also want to emphasize that you don't have to be the best at something to enjoy it. And I think a lot of students run into that wall of thinking, you know, oh, well, this person in the class is better than me, and so I don't like art anymore. I don't like it because it looks terrible and I can't draw stick people. And I think that one of the great things is just knowing that you don't have to be good at something at all to love it. You know, I always say, I tell the kids how I'm terrible at basketball. I can't run. When I was in middle school, I like slid across the line like on the pacer. I fell and slid, and I'm like, you know, that's me. I'm not athletic, but I love basketball and I will play it. And it doesn't matter how I am in relation to everybody else. It does take practice to get better. You might not be the best right now, but you could be if you keep going and you just let yourself fail. There is beauty to failure. You know, if you don't let yourself fail, then how are you going to learn anything else from it? This job it requires creative, critical thinking, and this is a long-lasting and impactful job. What you do and what you say and all of your actions impact other people. You know, the things that you say and what it is that you're choosing to teach is going to stay with some of these children for the rest of their lives. And with that, I think that your role as an art teacher or any teacher is vital in shaping the future. You know, you are impacting their creativity, their creative minds. And as I said earlier, it takes creative minds to resolve global issues and all sorts of other things. So without being able to, you know, instill the creative thought in the youth, where would we be? I just wake up each day, and if I feel like creating something, then I do. You know, if there's days where I'm not in the mood and I'm not feeling it, it's like, then I don't. You know, it's kind of just letting myself be and going with the flow and allowing my creativity to shape itself however it happens to be, in any form that it happens to be. My advice for anyone who wants to live a more creative life is Hakuna Matata. There's really no right or wrong way to be creative. I think that, you know, the only hindrance that people have when it comes to their creativity is their own fear of not having made enough, something not being enough. Their fear of comparing what it is that they're creating to other people's creations. And that's honestly, like, I think the biggest thing that limits people in their creativities. You know, just do it. Do it for yourself. Don't do it to appease other people. Do what you feel passionate about and the things that inspire you. Dive right into it. And, you know, it doesn't really matter whether it takes off and ends up making you money. It doesn't matter whether, you know, it ends up being terrible. Maybe to yourself you say, this was terrible, I hated how it turned out. But even with that, like the process of just setting your own work on fire is just as creative. So sometimes why I say Hakuna Matata, if you just kind of throw it in the air and just dive yourself in to see what happens, no worries, it's great.